Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. Hit the subscribe button. New viewers, check out many of the videos I have. Everybody else, welcome back. For those of you that have never been here, I served 17 years as a prisoner in the New York prison system, and not something I enjoyed or loved too much. Today, we're going to talk about the childish behavior of the prison system. We're going to talk about how they respond to situations in a very childlike manner, and how they won't allow the prisoner to win, even if the prisoner is in the right. You see, their ego is involved, their power is involved, and they don't let the prisoner win. When misbehavior reports are issued, if you receive a ticket and you go to the disciplinary hearing and you want to fight that ticket, they're not going to let you win the situation. And I've experienced that many times. It's just the way that they operate. I made a little video yesterday on the insane television program and the images that they would put inside of the prisoner's head, how it was not beneficial at all. But today we're going to talk about an incident that I got involved in. It wasn't a huge deal, but they made it a big deal, and they were very corrupt in the way that they handled the situation. So let me get right into it. This took place in Attica Prison. I did about 6 years in Attica Prison, and one of the most serious prisons in New York State. I think there's about 42 prisons in New York State right now. At the time I was in there was close to 60 prisons in New York State. One of the biggest prison systems in the United States of America, one of the biggest prison systems in the world. But I was in Attica at the time, and I had to take a program called ASAT. ASAT is a mandatory program. It's called Alcohol Substance Abuse Treatment, ASAT, ASAT. And it's a 6-month program that they force prisoners into. The way that they force you into the program is they tell you it's mandatory for your release, that you have to go to ASAT. And the only people that are supposed to go to ASAT are people that had an alcohol or drug problem, or really people who had an alcohol or drug related crime. And so what they would do is they would make almost everybody take it. And let's say you didn't have an alcohol related crime or a drug related crime. They would force you in there anyway. And the reason they would force you in there is because the state got paid for every single person they put in that program. And so they would try and force guys in there and make them participate in a 6-month program. And it really uprooted you, because it took you out of the program that you were in. It moved you out of the area of the prison that you were in. It took you out of the job that you were in, where you were making a certain amount of money to survive in the prison. And they forced you into this program because they were paid for it. And the program was a farce anyway. The program was run by another prisoner when it was supposed to be being run by a civilian most of the time. It was just a joke. The whole thing was a joke. There would be a civilian there sometimes. And this story is about the civilian that I had a confrontation with when I was in there. We had a female civilian, and what I mean by a civilian is someone that works in the Department of Corrections, uh, someone who's out in society. This is their job, but they're not a correctional officer. They are considered a civilian that comes into the prison to run the programs every day. And so this civilian comes in there. It was a woman, and she starts teaching the alcohol substance abuse training program. And it's really, what word can I use? It's a simplistic program. There's no depth to it. It's really is a shell of a program that they created to receive money, so the prison system can receive money. And so we're in this program, and I can see that this lady is really square. She's trying to teach us about drug addiction and alcoholism. And so I ask a question. It's a classroom type setting. There's maybe 15, 20 of us in the class at the time. And you have to go in the morning or go in the afternoon. And I say, can you tell me, what was your addiction? What were you addicted to? And she said, I never did any drugs. I said, you never did any drugs at all ever in your life? And she said, no. I says, what about alcohol? Were you an alcoholic? She goes, I never drank in my life. I said, you never drank in your life. You never drugged in your life. I says, and so you're really what they call like a textbook junkie. So she said, what do you mean? I said, everything you learned about drugs or alcohol, you learned from a textbook. It wasn't an insult. That's the reality of it. I said, but so you can personally never tell us what it feels like to be addicted to drugs or alcohol. That doesn't mean that we can't learn from you. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you don't know the intimate feelings of being addicted to drugs or alcohol. So it's very hard for you to explain to us who have been addicted to drugs or alcohol, I says, the feeling of addiction. Well, she didn't like this. I guess she felt like she was being challenged. She wanted a passive group of men to just sit there and do her spiel over 6 months without receiving even, that wasn't even a tough question. It was really just a statement pointing something out. But I don't think she really liked me from that point. And I wasn't being disrespectful at all. I really wasn't being disrespectful. Um, so every Friday we would see a movie. Okay, every Friday they would show a movie inside of the ASAT program, and she brought in a movie called Leaving Las Vegas, and it's with Nicolas Cage. It was a Nicolas Cage, and during the movie, as she was showing the movie, there's a pretty bad scene in the movie where a woman is sexually abused, where a woman is brutally raped, and they show her on the shower floor afterwards, curled up in fetal position, nude. And so when I saw that scene, I said, I don't want to watch this movie. I don't feel comfortable watching this movie. And so she said, why is that? I said, for number one, I says, I'm a God fearing man, and I don't feel it's proper to watch this movie. I don't like those images inside of my head. I says, so I don't. She said, if you leave, I'm going to write you a disciplinary ticket. So I said, you're going to force me to sit here and watch that. That's what you're going to do? You're going to force me to sit here and watch that? And she did. She said she's going to force me to sit there and watch that. So I finished the class. I sit there, and the class went on. So a few days later, we're in the class, and she says, "I'm taking requests for next week's movie. Does anyone have a request for next week's movie?" She says, "I'm going to go to Blockbuster Video." There was Blockbuster Video at the time. That's where they used to get the videos from. And so I raised my hand. I said, "Dude, I have a question." I says, does Blockbuster Video rent pornography?" And she didn't answer me. I didn't request pornography. I asked the question. I said, I have a question. Does Blockbuster Video rent pornography? The reason I asked that question is because what she had showed us the week earlier, I was pointing out to her how inappropriate the movies were that she was bringing in. Well, she didn't answer me when I said that. And she didn't say anything to me. Finished the class. And after we finished the class, uh, the next day, when I'm on my way to go back to class, the officers, the correctional officers, pull me aside and they say, "What happened in the program yesterday?" And so I tell them what happened in the program. And they say, "Listen, you need to sign this ticket right here." So they wrote me a ticket. And so I read the ticket, and in the ticket, it's a tier three ticket. And the tier three ticket is one of the worst tickets you can get in prison. It goes on a tier one, tier two, or tier three, and tier three being the most severe. And this was a tier three ticket, which was crazy. Excuse me. And I read the ticket, and it says that a inmate will not request pornography from staff. And I said, I didn't request any pornography at all. I says, I had simply asked her a question. I says, and she didn't answer the question. They said, well, sign the ticket. I says, I'm not signing that ticket. I says, I would never sign a ticket that's not true. And I would never sign a ticket that said I requested pornography, anything of the sexual nature. I said, so I'm not signing that. They take me back up to my cell. They lock me in my cell. So I'm confined in my cell. I'm issued the ticket and I have to wait on a disciplinary hearing. They leave me in my cell for 10 days um, without coming out, only for a shower twice a week. And I go to the disciplinary hearing. When I go to the disciplinary hearing, I explain to the hearing officer what I just explained to you, and they find me guilty of requesting pornography from the civilian. They give me 30 days in solitary confinement. So they move me out of my cell. They take me to solitary confinement. And then when I got out of solitary confinement, they gave me 90 days loss of everything. And what that means is 90 days loss of commissary, 90 days loss of packages, 90 days loss of phones. But they allowed me to have my visits. So just for that, of something I wasn't guilty of, they locked me in solitary for 30 days, locked me in my cell for 10 days, and stripped me of privileges for 3 months. Um, Also kicked me out of the ASAT program, which means I would have to start my 6 months over in another facility once I got there to take the program all over again. And this is the way that the Department of Corrections operated. This is the way that they would never allow you to win. This is the way that they handle situations in a very childlike demeanor. You know, I the main thing that I take away from that story is how inappropriate was it for a woman, civilian, to be locked in a room alone with no officer and to show a movie with that type of scene with a bunch of prisoners, right? That's so inappropriate in itself. And I always tried to be a logical person. You see, and I say this often, that I was obviously incarcerated for breaking the law. I was obviously incarcerated for not following the laws of society. I was guilty of that. I understood that. And when I found myself in the prison system, I always thought that the prison system should have a pretty intact logic in the way that they dealt with us. In other words, I really thought that somebody was thinking about things they should do and not do in order to make a difference in our lives, so we didn't go into freedom and come back into prison over and over again. To reduce the recidivism rate, I always thought that the decisions being made by the prison system would be more logical. But as I always tell you, the prison system is into incarceration, not rehabilitation. And so that is the story of leaving Las Vegas in the prison system and explaining to you a little bit about the way they operate. I have another video coming up later this afternoon or tonight, so stay with me, guys. I wish you the very best. Have a good day, a wonderful day, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.